Hi, welcome back to Mysteries Channeled. I want to thank you for clicking on my video. I know I've taken some time off here, but I had a death in the family and was just kind of dealing with some family stuff. And I'm sick now, so bear with me. The story that I'm bringing you today, I found while I was researching, my last video was about the elongated skulls, and I was trying to find Native American stories that spoke of people with elongated skulls or especially star people, and if they were ever described as having elongated skulls. I haven't found that yet, but I'm still working on that to see if I find anything. What I did find was an interesting story. The story is brought to you by a man named Harrison by way of Dr. Ardy Sixkiller Clarke. Ardy Sixkiller Clarke is a professor at Montana State University. She is Choctaw, Indian, and Cherokee, and has been researching star people and collecting encounters between them and the Native Indians for many, many years, for decades. She speaks to elders from many nations, and she compiles these stories, and the one that I'm going to bring to you is one of many of them. The man's name is Harrison. I don't know his last name. He's an elder of the Great Plains tribes. The North Plains tribes are located in the states of North and South Dakota, Wyoming, Idaho, and Montana. The North Plains tribes have many accounts of UFOs and star people, and the account that I'm going to bring to you is just one of them. So, how did she get to know this man? Harrison's relationship with Dr. Clarke grew over the period of years, decades really. Two of them met when his school district requested her assistance in applying for a federal grant. Harrison was her contact and was responsible for escorting her around the reservation. It took 25 years of visits before Harrison asked her if she herself believed in star people. She said yes, her grandmother had recounted stories of the myths and the legends of past, and she happened to believe them. In fact, she was collecting these, and one day she thought maybe she would make a book. So, with that, Harrison offered his story to her. When Harrison was young, from the age of 6 on, he went to go stay with his grandfather from the months of May through August. Both of his parents worked for the tribe, and they didn't want him just running around, running amok, so they sent him with Gramps, and he would go to Gramps' house, and basically it would come down like this. May rolls around. Harrison would pack 2 paper bags, one full of clothing and the other one that would have books, marbles, and a toy gun. He would go to Gramps' house, and it was completely isolated, and he loved it. There were no other kids to play with, but there were horses to ride, there were chores to do, and he relished it. He loved every single part of it. At nighttime, there was no way to entertain yourself. There were no TVs and no videos, no video games. None of this stuff existed where his grandpa was from. In fact, they entertained themselves by speaking of the myths and legends of old. And in 1945, when Harrison is 12 years old, this is what he encounters. He gets to his grandfather's land. Grandpa starts telling him a story like, something crazy happened in November. Listen to this. Grandpa says that one night he's at home and there's an earthquake. It shakes the house so bad that he is for sure it's going to collapse. He goes outside. Everything is shook. The horses are gone. Everything is dispersed. They've run from the land. But this was an intense and thunderous event that took place. So the next day he's out there, he's trying to gather up those horses and corral them and bring them back in, but they are shook and they are scared. And even when he collects them and brings them back, they are still trying to escape. Like, they really, really freaked out by this event that happened. So as he's out and he's corralling and clearing his land, Gramps, who has an extremely keen eye and also knows this land like the back of his hand, notices something. He sees a ship. He sees something sticking out of the back of the butte. Whatever it was created the earthquake that he felt. And it was more than an earthquake. It was just, an intense crash. This thing came in with such a force. It crashed into the butte, wedging itself in there where only a part of the back of it was actually exposed. It went down so far that it was almost like it created this level with the water table below. And Gramps, of course, watched it. He watched it for nearly a week, waiting for any signs of life to emerge from it. And after about a week, he makes his way up to the ship, and he brings an offering of food with him. As he gets to the ship, he is met by some extremely tall beings, at least 7 to 8 feet tall. They are extremely white in appearance. He thinks that maybe they have a thin skin because he feels like you can see through or into them. Not through them completely, but like you can kind of see into them. They are wearing a light green one-piece uniform, and they have hair that is completely white. When light hits it, it almost gives like a halo effect to them, and they have eyes that change color with the light as well. Gramps goes up and he offers them the food, and they do not accept it because they do not eat a flesh at all. And he can tell that they are wary of him. They're not exactly like, yeah, come hang out. They are like, no thank you. They back off. He backs off a little bit and they go about their way. He goes about his, but he is not letting it go. He is very enthralled by what he sees, and he knows that these are star people. It's a story that is passed down to star people, so he knows exactly what he's seeing, and he's enthralled by it, and he wants to know more. He wants to get to know them, and he wonders about them, and he's always out there kind of like stalking them a little bit. He means them no harm at all, but he wants to know them, and he runs into them by accident often. He sees them in the river, and he would try to go and approach them, but as he's watching them, he realizes that their weird one-piece clothing, it never gets wet, and he just notices everything about them. He recalls this as he's telling it to his grandson, like, I was fascinated by their clothing because it never got wet. Could you imagine what we could do with clothing like that? And so he would approach these beings, and as soon as he made his way up to them, they would just completely vanish before his very eyes disappear. This happened many times over the course of the next few weeks to maybe a month, where he would kind of like approach them and they would just be like, oh, I'm out, and disappear. But over time, he sensed that they realized he meant them no harm. He would never go and tell anyone of them. He knew that they were worried about being found out. So he relished in the fact that he was keeping the secret of the star people for them, and he really wanted to help them, and he really wanted to learn of them and about them. So while he was always out there stalking them and seeing what they were doing, he noticed that they were collecting plants, they were collecting rocks, they were very interested of the Earth's geology, basically. And he began to approach them with geodes. He would take geodes, he would take rocks, he would crack them in half so that it showed the little geode on the inside, and he would present it to them. And they were grateful, and they accepted his geodes, and they would put them in their collections, and they kind of built up a trust at this point. And they told his grandpa, and they showed his grandpa stuff about their own homeland. Once this trust was built up, Grandpa was invited into their ship. When he got in there, he realized that there were 14 beings, but 17 seats. He never saw any of the beings that were deceased, but he did believe that possibly some didn't make it, maybe 3. And when he was in there, they told him, or they showed him through a machine. Now, Grandpa lived in remote place in America at this point in time. He did not have a TV. He did not have, I don't even know if the man had a radio. Maybe he did, but I don't know that he did. He was living the old way that, generations of his family have done for a long time. And these beings showed him a machine. The machine, his grandfather described to his grandson as a picture rotating machine. But he thinks that his grandfather wasn't describing what he could not describe what he was seeing, basically. Harrison thinks that maybe it was something like a computer or a hologram or maybe even a TV, but his grandfather did not have the words to describe what he had been shown. This machine would show him their land and where they had come from. The land that they came from reminded his grandfather much of the Badlands. And if you've ever been to the Badlands, well, that's just what they are. They are Badlands. They're lands with, well, I'll show you a picture. It reminded him much of the Badlands, but without any vegetation at all. He was able to communicate with them, and they told him a little bit about their history. They told his grandfather that they were one of 4 ships that were exploring Earth. They had been doing so for thousands of years, and that there was a much larger ship that dropped them off, and that ship would come back indeed and get them. They told him that They were not worried about themselves at all because they knew that they could disguise themselves or disappear, vanish, and that people would not be able to find them, but they were worried about their ship. They did not want people to find it. They also traveled the universe, not just around Earth. And so Harrison's Gramps asked them, is your place heaven? And they said, we don't have heaven where we come from. No, that does not exist where we live. This is our place. And what the picture machine showed him was the Badlands with nothing on the surface, right? They said they live beneath the surface. Everything is beneath the surface. Water, their houses, everything is underneath. And so when they come to places like Earth, places so green with such beauties as the red willow tree that they seem to really be taken with, that they feel lucky. So Gramps develops this relationship with them, going back many times to look at the pictures of their world, not because he is super taken by what he sees of their world, but he is just completely blown away by this damn machine. The time comes when the other ship comes back for them. Gramps knew this was happening. They had told him for a while, like, they're coming back for us. They are going to rescue us. We will be leaving. And that time was April 17th of 1945. Gramps says that the other ship came. The body of the ship that came was covered in what maybe would be described as hieroglyphs, a picture type writing he felt like was on there, and off they went. Now, 2 years later, the Army Corps of Engineers shows up. They take Grandpa's land, they shove him onto the other side of the butte, the other side of where this craft had gone in. Obviously, while they are surveying the land and making plans for this big dam that's going to go up, they have to have found the spaceship that crashed there. Gramps believes that they did, and he suspects that they actually took it with them. And there's one other thing that I wanted to note. Harrison indeed went on the ship. He showed up in May, and almost, like a month after the visitors left, and Gramps took him on there. He showed him the ship. That's when Harrison went and paced it, figured out the size of it, that it was a cylinder 60 by 30, and that he sat in one of the seats. And what he said it felt like when you sat in the seat is that it enveloped you, almost like it hugged around your body. He didn't feel any fear or claustrophobia when this occurred, but it hugged around your body. And as soon as you were ready to get up, as though the ship were alive itself, it would release you and you could get up and go out. So that is Harrison's story. When I told you I think I know where it was, I mean, I really don't know for a fact, but he is a North Tribes native, so we already know that it's probably North South Dakota, Idaho, Montana, or Wyoming. He speaks of a dam that was built in 1947, and he describes the area, the land, like the Badlands. That would probably be North Dakota, right? That's Badlands area, although it kind of really goes all the way over to, through into parts of Montana, but Garrison Dam is a dam that was built on the Missouri River in central North Dakota. It was constructed by the Army Corps of Engineers from 1947 to 1953. At over 2 miles in length, the dam is the 5th largest earthen dam in the world. The reservoir impounded by the dam is Lake Sacagawea, and it extends to Williston with the confluence of the Yellowstone River along the Montana border. I don't know for sure, but this might be the area of Harrison's grandfather's land. So tell me what you think about it. I think it is interesting that the ship had hieroglyphs on it, of course, and I also think it's very interesting that the people came from a land where you had to live underground, because there have been points in time in Earth's history where many people lived underground, including Native Americans. In fact, any culture around the world at some point in time has lived underground. There are many underground cities, there are many underground caverns, caves that show that people lived underground, and it just seems like there's still a lot of underground earth building going on today. So anyway, thank you for clicking on the video. Tell me what you think. Have you heard of Harrison's story before? Are you aware of Native Americans and the Star people and what they talk about in their histories? I think I'm going to go a little bit further into it the more I research. Tell me what you think. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.